What is up, guys, and welcome to the Strength of Body and Mind podcast. My name is Gordon. I'm going to be your host, and this is episode 75. This is going to be actually the second guest episode that I've had on this podcast. The first was several months ago over the summer 2018, and that was with Dan Holguin. But this second one, this is someone that I've met I don't even know, like sometime in the past year online, just through mutual friends and Facebook groups, and just, we crossed paths so many times. And anyway, this particular person, his name is Patrick Umphrey, and he's a coach and trainer, and he kind of has found his niche in powerlifting coaching, although that's not exclusively what he does. But he's a great dude. He's a wealth of knowledge. And as you know, I'm very selective with who I bring on this podcast for a whole number of reasons. But this particular person, I just believe, is someone who has a lot of knowledge and education, experience, and can bring a lot of value. So before I get into the interview, though, it's not even an interview, really. It's more of a discussion. There's some questions, but it's really just a conversation. So, and in that context, I think you guys will get more out of it than if I was interviewing him in a structured, formal way. But anyway, before I get into that, if you haven't yet, take a couple minutes, go over to iTunes, review the podcast, screenshot your review, and post it in Instagram or Facebook stories, and tag me and one other friend. That whole process will take you 3 to 5 minutes. And if you do that, you will be entered to win a $50 Amazon gift card. And honestly, from when this is airing, you're only going to have about a week, like 6 days. So if you listen to this the day that it airs, do it immediately. Pause this, go do it. It'll only take you a couple minutes, and you'll have an opportunity of winning one of 4, actually, $50 Amazon gift cards. So again, go over to iTunes, leave me a review. You can do it right on your phone. Screenshot the review and post it in your Instagram stories or Facebook stories. Tag me and tag a friend. Now, if you post it in both Instagram and Facebook, you have double the chances of winning. So I definitely encourage you to do that. And it would help me out. It would help the listeners out. It would help the podcast grow. And, it's the giving season, so why not do that anyway? So one other thing before I jump into the conversation with Patrick, which is this. If you're new to the podcast and you don't know what Strength of Body stands for, you don't know what I stand for and what I believe and why this podcast exists, I'm going to break it down very simply. I definitely encourage you to go back at some point and listen to some of the previous content. But again, real quick, Strength of Body and Mind was founded from really one core belief, one core set of beliefs. And that is that the mind, the mindset, perspective, having a vision, being able to visualize your goals in fitness has a way bigger impact than most people think. Okay, way bigger impact than most people think. And that alone, that thing alone is the one thing, well, not the one thing, but it's a crucial part of why most people fail at fitness, or why they cannot sustain and stay consistent in fitness. Yes, you need to train right. You need to eat right. Those are all obvious things. Yes, you need to drink water. You need to, adhere to your calories and your macros. All that stuff is obvious. Okay, what's not obvious that most people fail at is keeping the right mindset, developing the right mindset specifically, and this is a big one, is developing the understanding and the belief that you can receive the results that you actually want. Right? I get into this in depth in other episodes, but just hear the words one more time, is developing the belief and the understanding that you can actually receive the results that you want. In other words, if your results that you want, your actual goal that you want is so massive that you can't possibly put together in a realistic context how it would be possible to achieve that, that is where the break is. And that is where you need to make the connection so that you can actually go forward. You can make a lot of progress. You can get a lot of results, but you won't actually get the results you want until you can get yourself in that frame of mind where you are ready to receive those results that you actually want. Not a maybe, not a potentially, not a possibly, not a someday, not well, that person got it, but they got lucky, or they have this genetic advantage or whatever. Like, throw all that away. Get yourself into this mindset where you can receive the results that you actually won. Okay, that is really what strength of body and mind is all about. So with that, guys, I'm going to jump right over to this conversation with my man, Patrick Umphrey. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Strength of Body and Mind podcast. I've got my main man, Patrick Umphrey here. Patrick, first of all, actually, before we even get into like your backstory and stuff, before we go into all that, I just have to know, dude, what are you, and this can be about fitness, this can be about anything you want, but what today, December 11th, has you freaking excited right now?
Wow, that is a fantastic question. What has me excited? I am excited for a couple of online courses that I am going to take in January, and I'm excited about them because I'm going to learn things, and I'm going to focus on self-development. There's a course that Alex Viata is just piloting in January, and it is designed to kind of bridge the gap between the academic side of exercise science and the more application, like personal trainer side of things. And I'm pretty sure it's my friend Jeff Futch who is in charge of a lot of the behind the scenes work. He might even be teaching the course. But I just signed up yesterday, and then I'm also going to be enrolling into the reactive training systems. They have some online courses, and that is Mike Toucher. He runs RTS, which is a very reputable and successful powerlifting coaching team that has a lot of competitors over at USAPL Nationals, and he's a very smart guy, and I'm really looking forward to that too. So,
dude, that's awesome.
I'd say those are two things that I'm excited about.
That actually just opens up a whole new category that I wasn't actually planning on talking about, but I have to now.
Boom.
Yeah. So, how long have you been? Just real quick, easy. How long have you been in fitness? Just in the fitness space, working out, training, coaching, all of it.
8 years, I think.
Okay, eight years. Yeah. And we'll talk about Eat, Train, Progress and the experience that you have and the coaching experience that you have, and but my point is, like, you've been in 8 years pretty extensively, yet you're still a student of the game.
Oh, absolutely. Like, and I find that the farther along I go, the dumber I feel. Like, I just like, and I don't mean to, like, insult myself like that, but it's pretty accurate. Like, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah. And so it's, I'm actively seeking out more things to learn. So
yeah,
that's where that comes from.
Where do you think you have had that revelation the most? Is it on the lifting side, exercise side, physical movement side, or on the nutrition side, biology side?
I think it's both. I think I would, if I had to choose between those two, it's probably more training focused. But the biases there are probably that, while I don't exclusively work with powerlifters, I do have a pretty high percentage. It's probably a little over 50% of my entire client base are competitive powerlifters, and so I'm not sure how that happened, but it did. And so I would say that I have more of I don't want to say a focus, but like I find myself thinking a lot about program design and about technique and about things related to getting people stronger, and so I think that's where a lot of that comes from, but it's certainly not just that. I mean, it's definitely both.
Yeah. So for everyone who's listening, I mean, you heard the intro. Patrick he's got 8 years experience. He says so himself, but he's a coach and he's a trainer, and he runs a very big community called Eat, Train, Progress. And if you're not part of it on Facebook, you definitely got to go over there and check it out. It's a free group. There's tons of people in there that have tons of knowledge, including Patrick himself. He's in there every single day. But
Eat Train Progress is bigger than that. So I'm curious, Patrick, why don't you just give everyone just like a quick little like summary? What is Eat Train Progress? How did you come up with it? And like, what does that stand for? And what does that brand really mean to you? And what do you deliver?
Yeah, well, let's start with how it began. It started as a group on MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal has a forum, and you can create and run your own subgroups in there. And so I started it with a friend of mine, and we originally created it so that we had a place that we could distribute information, but prevent people from just basically spouting nonsense. And so we could, if it's our forum, we can have our own rules and things like that. And that's also where I got started, kind of getting my feet wet with coaching, in that I would have people create specific threads, filling out a kind of questionnaire, and my friend Sarah and I would go in there and basically talk about the answers to their questions. So I'll give you an example. If their bench press were stalled out, they would fill out a specific set of information. Her and I would get on there and come up with a plan of action for them. And that's not the same as one-on-one coaching, because it was her and I, reading information and then typing up a response. But it was kind of the starting point of that. And that group, it's still on MyFitnessPal, but I'm no longer active in there. But when I left, it had something like 10,000 people in there, so it got pretty big. And that's really where it all started. And then I moved it from there over to Facebook.
So that's awesome, first of all. But how did you get? Because right now, I mean, the last time I checked, anyway, the Facebook group Eat Train Progress has like 12,000. Maybe even more members at this point.
It's at 17,000 now.
17. Okay, so somewhere, I don't know, maybe I misread it, or I don't know,
That's
whatever.
right.
But either way, so 17,000 people. So how did you grow that group so big? Now, even if every single person came over from MyFitnessPal, which is probably unlikely, but even if they did, how did you grow that to such a huge audience, such a huge group?
The first answer is I don't know. But I can tell you what I think were probably factors that contributed to it. I think one is probably luck. I think that one is that I try to demonstrate my personal values in how I run the group. And I also have a team of moderators that do a fantastic job helping me do that. We have a very clear list of rules that we enforce. I do my best to try to provide information, but also to try to provide people with the feeling that they're valued, in that I want people to know that I appreciate them in the group. I want to provide content that is engaging so that people feel compelled to offer their response. And I also think that having friends in the industry who also have a lot of experience, have large followings, has undoubtedly been helpful. And I could chalk some of that up to luck, because when you have someone who has a huge following who promotes your group by putting it on their wall and saying, hey, this place is great, you should join it. There have been people that have done that, and I've picked up like 500 followers in the course of a few days. And so I have to imagine that networking aspect is also a very important piece of growing a group.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. Now, do you said it plain? This is really for me. I'm just curious.
Yeah. What's up?
Do you find that a lot of those followers individually outside of the group send you messages?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, with 17,000 people, like it's not a high percentage, but I would say that, in a given week, I probably get anywhere from 5 to 10 messages that are just people that I don't interact with on a regular basis, that are just group members that either have a question, or I also, fortunately, I get a lot of people that will just reach out to me randomly to just say thank you and that they love the group, and that just makes me feel good. So
yeah, that's so great.
I do get a fair amount of that, and it reinforces it gives me the impression that I am adding value, and that makes me feel good, and that motivates me to keep doing it.
You definitely are. And I'm a big believer in like putting people around you, building up your proximity, building up your circle to be of like-mindedness. I'm a huge fan of that. And I'm just going to stress that one more time. Like if you're someone listening to this and you don't currently have a lot of positive influences in the fitness space, whether it's like other coaches, trainers, people who are actually experienced, or people who are also trying to go through some kind of transformation or build some level of strength that is beyond what they're at now or something like that, then that group right there, the Eat, Train, Progress group, is a place you want to be. That's like those are the types of people you want around you, even if it's remotely through Facebook. So anyway,
I love it.
Yeah, no, it's an awesome place. So you've done something really special there, Patrick, for sure.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, man. So one of the things that that this whole brand, Strength of Body and Mind, like the podcast and what I try to convey into my clients through my coaching style, is it's really about mindset. Like I truly believe that is like, it's the cornerstone of the whole thing. And one of the things that I find, and I really want your opinion on this, but one of the things I find is that like anyone can obviously figure out through Googling and YouTube searching and whatever, watch videos, they can figure out how to calculate macros, how to eat, how to train, how to lift weights, whatever. All that stuff's pretty simple. Not necessarily easy, but it's simple. What I find the most is like this common challenge where people, it's not that they can't achieve results through doing those things, is that they can't get past the mental block that it's possible for them to actually receive those results. So just a prime example, someone who's trying to really go through something massive, like lose 40 pounds. I don't know, I'm just making this up on the spot, but lose 40 pounds, which is a pretty significant goal for a lot of people. Something like that. They have trouble actually visualizing that they could actually receive the benefit of going through that. They could actually achieve that thing.
Interesting.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting way to put it. I think that we talk a lot about the importance of goal setting, and I think that sometimes, in at least some examples, goals can seem insurmountable when you're focusing on the end result rather than focusing on the process. And so I think that there's a chance that in some of those cases, those might be individuals who are much better suited to not concern themselves so much with this end outcome and to place the emphasis on, rather than I need to lose 40 pounds, it becomes what choices do I need to make today? And just put that as the, kind of at the forefront of where their mental energy needs to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And I think, okay, so I kind of want to unpack that a little bit. So that's awesome. I agree, right? So if someone has a big, massive goal like that, and they're able to get to the place where they can say it out loud, which is hard enough for some people anyway, is just saying, you know what? Yes, Patrick, dude, I want to lose 40 pounds, right? I realize it's difficult, but I want to lose 40 pounds. Originally, I said I wanted to lose 20, but that's actually bullshit. What I really want is to lose 40. And I didn't want to say that because it didn't seem realistic enough.
Sure.
But now I'm saying it. I want to lose 40 pounds. That's a big looming goal. It's way off in the distance, and it seems insurmountable, like you said. So to get from here to there, I personally believe that having someone in your court that can help you basically generate a blueprint that you can follow, so that you can focus on today, and then maybe tomorrow, and then the next day, and then the next day, in that order, and not focus on the 6 or 8 months or whatever it's going to take to lose 40 pounds. That's how I see the best way to execute that.
I agree.
So what about people who aren't able to put those pieces together by themselves? Like, what do you think the right move is?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one because you're talking about, I'm assuming anyway, you're referring to like people who are doing this on their own and don't necessarily have the coaching or the support network to help them through that. Is that what you're asking? Just to make sure I'm understanding.
So anyone who, anyone who, they may not even know that like either coaching is even a thing. They might know that personal training is a thing, but not necessarily coaching, or they're stubborn and don't feel like they need to maybe put someone in their court. Like, how would you if someone were to come up to you and describe this scenario, like what would be your recommended course of action if they're sitting there fumbling over and over and over and over again because they're looking at this huge picture, this huge 40-pound goal that they're trying to get to, but they don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
It's like they don't know what they don't know kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I don't mean to sound like a broken record because I'm kind of going to repeat what I've said originally, but I would urge them to identify actionable steps that they can take immediately or in the short term or today that are going to get them towards their goal. Now, if this is someone who does not have either the experience or I'll say education, but I don't mean education in a general sense. I mean on the specific topic of how to lose weight. Providing them with some of those basic tools might be helpful. It might be helpful to sit down with them and to try to identify what the barriers are. So, for example, I'll give you one example from a former, technically not a client. I did one session with him, but he is a friend from 10, 15 years ago. I still interact with him on Facebook, and I gave him one lesson on how to sumo deadlift and how to squat in the gym, and we just had a conversation about diet, but I was not coaching him on diet, and there was no ongoing support. So I'll back up a step. On the internet, we might hear that everyone has to track calories or everyone has to do, if it fits your macros or whatever. And yeah, those are great methods for some people, some of the time, not knocking it, but this is someone who is very clearly, this friend of mine, not in a position that they're going to start up a MyFitnessPal account and get a food scale and start meticulously tracking everything. But when we sit down and have a conversation and find out that he's drinking 6 Mountain Dews a day, now we've identified a very, very easy, I should say simple, singular change that we can focus on that is going to potentially have a large impact. And so the process I took with him was to say, do you think you can stop drinking Mountain Dew? And his honest answer was entirely. And I said, well, could you? And he said, no. And then I said, well, could you switch to diet? And he said, no, I won't do that because I hate diet. And I said, okay, you're drinking 6 a day. Do you think you could cut down to 4? And he said, I think I can do 2 to 3. And I said, okay, let's make that change. And he ended up dropping something like 12 pounds in the next, I think it was over the next 5-6 weeks, something like that. I don't have the actual data, but the point of this is that you're talking about making one behavioral change. And now not everyone is going to have that capacity in their diet to say, oh, I'm just going to change this one thing and now drop 12 pounds. I get that. That's not going to work for everyone. But you don't know until you actually just sit down and have that conversation. And I think that there are plenty of examples where that is the better approach than telling someone you've got to start logging everything that you eat, because they might not have the readiness to do that. And there are examples where if you ask too much of someone when they're first starting out, that could be the thing that pushes them over the edge and causes them to give up and quit. Much in the same way that you would never take someone, or at least you shouldn't be taking someone on day one of a training program and having them do like 5 sets per exercise and an hour and a half session and make it so they can't get out of bed the next day. Like, that is not smart coaching. And so it's similar to that. Did that answer your question, or did I just ramble?
That was good. That was
okay.
That was perfect.
I was making sure. I wasn't sure if I went off the deep end there.
That was great. So for people who are listening, like, it's yes, I talk a lot about macros on this podcast.
Sure.
And if you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, I talk about that. I talk about intuitive eating. I talk about how I truly don't believe in intuitive eating until you understand your body a little bit. Intuitive eating is what got me in trouble. Intuitive eating is what has gotten so many people I know in trouble, because they quote unquote listen to their body and they ignore the hunger police, or they ignore the food, whatever all those rules are for intuitive eating. And what that causes them to do is just eat everything. It's what caused me to eat everything.
In some ways, I think that the term intuitive eating has become eating without any formal type of logging. And I don't necessarily think that's an accurate way to describe it. I'm not saying that you're using that term that way. I'm saying that just in general, I find that in a lot of online discussions that people say intuitive eating, but that's not always what they mean. And
that is true. I agree. Yes, you're right. It's a misused term, but I do talk about that a lot. I do talk about macros. But what Patrick's describing guys, for those who are listening, like you can very likely find one thing that you can start doing today or stop doing today in this case. That's a good point. Yep. Yeah. And have massive impact Absolutely. And, I talk a lot about being intentional and being very meticulous in your decision making. If you focus your energy and you focus like your actions on one thing at a time, and you do it well, and just incrementally, slowly, and gradually build off of that, you'll be amazed how much progress you can make without having to make this entire radical lifestyle change all at once.
Yep.
So that's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. So one question that keeps coming up when I talk to people, and especially as a dad, and I know you're a dad, is and we've got friends and our kids have friends and whatever, is fitness, the perspective of fitness in the society, at least here in the US, both in the youth and adult communities, more so in the youth community. I'm curious of like what do you think the current state of the union is as far as like youth fitness and how it's perceived, and do you think, like, if you had the power to change anything, would you?
I think that I actually don't have a good handle on where that is, and that could be just due to my children being as young as they are. So not to be a conversation killer, but like I honestly don't feel like I have a good sense of where that actually is at the moment. And one thing on a kind of a personal note, I've participated in some discussions where I will hear people make statements about, I'll give you one example, and I hope this doesn't open up a can of worms. I'm not sure if you saw the thread on my wall, or I'm sorry, in Eat, Train, Progress, where I mentioned that it's unethical for a personal trainer to try to persuade people to stop taking medications or to not go to their doctor. Well, what started this was a blog post by a fitness professional that essentially said that most doctors are terrible, and here's why. Okay. And now, without going into that topic, because that could open up this massive can of worms, the issue that I have with it is, why would someone feel like they know what most doctors do? Like, have they gone to like millions of doctors? No, probably not. So why would someone feel like they actually have the requisite knowledge to make a factual statement about, hundreds of thousands of people that have the occupation of doctor? Like, I just don't get how someone has the balls to like make statements that they know what most like, how would you know the competency level of all of these people? I just don't get how someone would know that. Now, that's not to say, by the way, to tie it back to this conversation, that's not to say that I don't think there are fitness professionals like perhaps yourself and other people who could very accurately talk about the state of things in terms of how fitness is perceived and how fitness is taught to our children and things like that. It's a very good question. All I'm saying is that I really have no idea where it's at. Like, I'm out of touch with that entirely. Perhaps I should be more in touch with it, but I'm really not. So let me ask you this: what's your opinion about that?
Yeah,
about the question you just asked me? Like,
sure.
Tell me what you think about where things are at right now. My children, by the way, are 7 and 4. I don't know.
My son is 7. That's perfect, actually.
Cool. So you tell me what your experience is.
Yeah, and that's a fair answer, by the way. I mean, you don't know, and that's cool, or you're not comfortable, maybe. I'm not, obviously. I don't have kids in high school. I don't have kids in middle school, so I don't have a great pulse on it either.
Yeah.
I have nephews and nieces, and I have friends with kids who are in high school and middle school, and I ask them all the time. I'm actually extremely interested in this topic, and the perception that I have is based on my relatively small sample size of data points, but it's not great, or at least around here.
Sure.
Okay, it's not great.
You're in Massachusetts, right?
I'm in, the Boston area. Yep.
Cool.
So it doesn't seem to be like there's much emphasis on anything beyond the mandatory 1 hour per week or whatever, 2 hours per week of physical education class at school.
Yep.
Which kind of looks like maybe it's not really physical education. It's more like this required checkbox, at least around here, that they're forced to at least go into the gymnasium and move around a little bit, but they're not really doing any actual physical activity, nothing real.
Yeah.
And so the perception I get is that there's just not as much of an emphasis on there as there probably should be.
Gotcha.
Like so the way I perceive fitness, and a lot of people get confused about this. They think that, not everyone, by the way, but a lot of people see a trainer or a coach and they think that fitness is like the most important thing in my life. Or they might look at you and say, you're a coach, you're a trainer, you are obsessed with fitness and you think everyone should be at their peak physical condition at all times. And that is not how I personally see it. I do, however, So I do, however, think that fitness is important, obviously, which is why I'm into it. And also that you have a body, like as a human, you have a body, you have your own body, you're obligated to take care of it. And one of the things that we do is, or a lot of things we do, like brush our teeth, go to the dentist, go to therapists, go to our primary care, we get physicals, we can do all this stuff. We take medication when our doctor tells us we need to, but a lot of times we don't put a lot of emphasis on taking care of our bodies. And what I'm starting to see is that practice or that lack of practice is because of developed habits over time, or lack of developed habits over time, starting at a young age, that you have to take care of your body. Yep. And that doesn't mean be 4% body fat or whatever. Like, it's not that. It's just taking care of yourself and putting some emphasis on utilizing your body, keeping it strong, keeping it healthy, keeping your arterial health in check, things like that, flexibility, range of motion. And I just don't see an emphasis on that.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think I'm glad I asked you that question, because that's way better than anything I would have said.
I've given a lot of thought. And again, I grill my friends all the time who never think about this stuff. And they have kids that are older than mine. And they're like, dude, I don't know. Like, I don't even think about that. They go to school. They play baseball in the spring. I don't know. I just never think about it. I mean, I let them eat whatever they want. They eat Doritos. They eat McDonald's. And is that a problem? And then they start asking me, and then the conversation turns, and they start asking me what I think their kids should do.
Sure, that's a tough one, I bet.
It's really awkward. Yeah. That's funny. Well, this is kind of a weird transition, but one of the things I wanted to ask you about too is supplementation.
Sure.
So, and I'll just prime you on how I feel about supplementation.
Sure.
Because a lot of times this is controversial with people, but like, I'm a huge fan of supplements if they are used as supplements.
Yeah.
And all supplementation is not required for every person, and not all supplements are required at all if the nutrition is right. So, that's kind of how I see it, but I'm curious of your thoughts.
I agree. I think that, you should, we can't really there's very few blanket recommendations one could make about supplementation without knowing the individual and their needs and what they're getting from their diet. And I think that that's how it really that's how the conversation should start. As a coach, I try to walk that line of scope of practice, and I don't tend to tell people, hey, you have to take this supplement, because that's really unethical. But, if I have, say, a strength athlete, I might educate them on the benefits of creatine and send them some information for them to check out. And a lot of them choose to take it because I think it's quite beneficial. But I mean, not to be boring, but I think you nailed it. That's pretty much how I view it. And I do think that a lot of people put a little too much emphasis or believe that supplements do a lot more than they actually do. Like, I think in many of these cases, the effects that they have are small. And I think that needs to be kept into perspective.
Yeah, I just don't think I'm starting to see that so when I was growing up and I started getting into weightlifting in high school, the supplement industry was very, very huge. I can open up any Muscle and Fitness magazine or whatever, and it was, 3/4 of the magazine was supplements.
Yep.
And so I felt like I had to go to GNC and buy everything in the store. And then as I got older, I didn't take anything. And then I got my most results when I wasn't taking anything. And then I slowly started sprinkling things back in, and I noticed that rounded out that last few percent.
Sure.
And what I always tell my clients is, the nutrition is everything there. Well, it's the majority of it. Like that's going to have the biggest impact. And then your training on top of that. And then we'll sprinkle in things on top of that. If I feel like it's a good fit, I'll recommend it to you.
Sure.
That's cool. So I'm glad to hear. We never had this conversation before.
No.
For those who are listening, like we didn't talk about this ahead of time. And I'm always curious when I talk to trainers and other coaches how they feel about supplementation. And I'm finding finding more and more that no one forces it. So it's cool to hear.
Yeah, I mean it's a small part of the puzzle, and it's something that needs to be done on a client by client basis in terms of there are people that are going to be getting different things from their diet or not getting certain things from their diet. There could be some lifestyle things. So for example, I have no issue if someone is getting, taking 2 or 3 scoops of whey protein a day. As long as they're satiated and they're getting enough micronutrients, and they're not just exclusively having a diet consisting of only whey protein, which nobody does that. I don't have any issue with that. And likewise, I have no issue if someone's able to get enough dietary protein without ever touching supplementation. That's also fine. And I just think that, I don't like these extreme stances, because there are some people who think you should never take supplements and you should get everything you can from whole foods and supplements are bad. And likewise, there are people who think that you have to be taking a protein supplement when it's like, well, how much chicken are you eating? Like, what you need, you need to get enough protein for your goals. But whether that comes from a powder or whether you get that through whole foods, I think is, that's not critically important.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's great. Do you use a coach? Do you personally?
Currently, no. I have hired a few different coaches who I greatly look up to, and I've done that for mainly academic purposes. And so there are a few people who I've hired for Skype consultations. There's a few people I've hired where I've basically paid their fee, and I've either for things for my own fitness, or if I have a few clients that I'm wanting a second opinion on, I might, take some lifting videos and sit down with someone I consider a good educator and say, hey, here's my thoughts on this. I'd like to know what you think, and stuff like that. So I do that to become a better coach.
Oh, that's awesome. So that's just circling right back around to continuing to be a student of the game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's plenty of times where I'll reach out to someone and say, hey, what do you think of this? And whether that's just a quick conversation or whether that's getting on Skype with them and doing a consult, it's absolutely worth it to me. I've learned a lot from it too.
No, that's great, man. And like that kind of like strengthens or reiterates a point that I wanted to make about coaching. So I personally believe in coaching, which is why I've made that my career, and why I'm so passionate about it. And it wasn't until I don't know that we've had I don't think we've had the exchange where I kind of explained my backstory to you, but very, very briefly, I fumbled for many years until I found mentorship in fitness.
Yeah.
And then once I found mentorship, I got like basically put right into my lane where I needed to be. I executed on a system. I learned so much by having the right people around me that I went and in some cases paid for, in some cases not. And I learned so much, and I had to overcome about an 85-pound loss. And then
that's great.
Yeah, but I mean, thank you. But it took, it was difficult, but then once I figured that out though, like I learned so much. And from there, that just went into several years of kind of figuring things out even more so. And then I eventually got, I'm a certified trainer. I went for that. And then I became a coach. And that's when like it all started to click for real. And that's when I realized that, I was in that situation where I didn't even know what I didn't know. I feel like I've said that 3 times in this podcast, but I was in a position where I didn't know what I didn't know. And then it took someone to come in as kind of like that beacon and provide that information and set me straight. And then I figured everything out. So now being able to do that for other people is very fulfilling, obviously. And I feel like it's a reward in itself being able to do that. So I'm a big proponent of coaching, and I always will be. And I still use a coach today. Good. And I'm continuously learning from them. I'm continuously changing the way I do things, and by enhancing myself here and there, and just always learning, always tweaking. But when it comes to coaching versus training, I like to talk about that a lot too. I'm curious of your thoughts on the personal training model versus an online coaching model, because
Sure.
coaching allows you to coach at scale remotely.
Yep.
Right, online coaching. And I believe in the power of it so much. I'm just curious of your thoughts. In-person personal training versus online coaching at scale. What are your thoughts on those two things? And which would you recommend for somebody?
I think that there's pros and cons to each approach, and I think it's going to be a matter of what the individual needs. And so I can absolutely think of cases where online coaching is not the right tool for someone, and being in a gym with a personal trainer is the right tool. And I can also think of cases where that's probably not true. And so so I'd prefer to frame this discussion in terms of kind of talking about what the main differences might be. I think that might be a good place to start.
Let's do it.
Online, I think one of the biggest advantages on the consumer end is both the convenience factor of not having to meet a trainer at a specific time at a gym. Now, depending on the online coaching platform, you might still have to meet them on Skype, but there's a much larger convenience factor. And I think on both the coaching and the consumer end, the client end, the fact that the coach has a much larger reach, so they can be coaching people all over the world, and the client has the option of seeking out, if there's a certain coach that they know that they either get along with, or they believe in their philosophy, or they followed their material online, they're able to pursue a specific person. Whereas if you have a gym membership, you're basically limited to the trainers that are at that particular gym, and that can be quite limiting for people. And so I think that's a gigantic difference. I think that one major disadvantage to coaching online is that I can think of two major disadvantages. One is that it's much harder to make technical adjustments I shouldn't say it's harder to make those adjustments. It's less efficient, time efficient to make adjustments to technique when someone is lifting weights. So if I am coaching someone on a squat, if I do that in person, I can get immediate feedback, and I can provide immediate feedback. And the ability to do that can allow me to make changes at a faster pace. This is going to sound like a minor point, but it's worth mentioning. It's the sensation of touch cannot be used on the internet. It's probably a good thing, LOL. But in person coaching someone, you can provide by literally putting your hands on them. You would always ask first, of course, but there might be something that you can do to teach something that involves a sense of touch. One example could be if someone has knee collapse when they're coming up out of the squat, you could take the backs of your hands and put them on the insides of their knees and literally apply a very gentle force to give them something to push against, so they experience that tactile sensation. It might cue them on what they're supposed to do to keep those out. If they have like low kinesthetic awareness or something like that, that might be a tool that you can use to do that. And there's, of course, other ones that you can do that the sense of touch might allow you to communicate something that you can't do online. So those would be some differences. I think that some clients are going to feel better and feel more confident having a trainer with them in the gym. And so I think that those could be examples where someone is better off having an in-person trainer. And this is a generalization that's not always going to be true, but I think it's true enough that I'd be comfortable making the generalization. And I think that's that people that have at least some basic amount of exercise experience, who know how to do some basic techniques in the gym, they might not need to be shown how to do like a dumbbell row or how to use the leg curl machine. They might be in a position where they're better. I shouldn't say better off, but by comparison, if you compare that to someone who's never exercised before, someone who has never exercised before probably shouldn't go with an online coach. More often than not, I think they're better off getting in-person instruction. So those are just some differences that I would cite that I think are worth noting, maybe. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you make some awesome points. I never really thought about the sense of touch thing, but I can tell you firsthand from training people in person, just like you probably, that just like some gentle pressure here and there just to correct their form, or tell them, this muscle group right here, and point to that thing, and like whatever, gently touch it with your hand or whatever, and just say, this is what you should be kind of like really, really engaging. This is your prime mover. So when you do this exercise, you should really focus on that during the contraction, and that will provide you the most, whatever. Right? You can get into those things a little bit easier in an in-person conversation when they're standing in front of you. Yes, I totally agree with that. I've had tremendous success, however, coaching people online for the first time who have never really spent time in the gym, just through demonstration videos and some basic stuff.
Oh, you definitely can. I'm suggesting that it's probably more efficient to do that in person.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. And I've actually worked with people before where their first course of action was to spend an hour with a trainer.
Yep.
It wasn't me. Like a basic personal trainer, just walking them through some stuff, some basic things. And then from there, they were fine. Like they took everything else from there. And so there's so many different ways to do it. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that, like everyone's strategy on how to really get started might be a little bit different. And that's okay.
I agree.
That's okay. Do you spend a lot of time personal training anymore?
I don't do any in person anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't do any in that I don't hire out for it. Right. I regularly handle lifters at powerlifting meets, and I am very fortunate that I've had some clients that will fly me out to their location to handle them. And when I do that, we usually also do an in-person session just so I can go over some technical stuff. And so I am still, I no longer offer it as a service, but I still work with people in person, just not nearly as frequently or as often as I do the online, because that's part of my daily life now.
Right. No, that's great, man. So that has become your full-time gig?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Incredible. Technically, I still perform close-up magic, which I don't know if you knew that, but I'm a professional magician also, and so I do corporate gigs and stuff like that, and so I am still doing that a couple times a week. But the amount of time I spend on coaching and the mental energy is basically where all of my resources go right now.
No way. I got to unpack that for just a second. You
go for it, man.
You are an illusionist of sorts?
Close-up magician. I do close-up magic.
Is that like
card tricks and stuff like that? Yeah.
Really? I did not know that. Should I have known that? I feel like I should have known that.
That's all right. Well,
is that something you talk about in ETP a lot?
I don't talk about it a lot. I mean, most of the stuff I talk about is either immature jokes or fitness-related stuff. But yeah, I still perform regularly.
So. That's so cool, man. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, I love it.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, I mean, this has been awesome. I want everyone and anyone who listens to this to engage with you, because I think there's a lot to learn there for sure. And Patrick's a great resource. So how can people, besides going over to the Eat, Train, Progress Facebook group and joining that, how can people reach out to you and connect with you? Where do you hang out the most online?
I'm on Facebook more than anywhere else in terms of if someone wants to get a hold of me or get my attention, that is by far the best place. I also have an Instagram account, which is just Eat, Train, Progress, one word. And I'm starting to focus more on the Instagram account, but it's sort of it's what I use to review a lot of my clients' lifting videos, so they'll tag me on there. But Facebook is really where my online home is. So
Facebook's it.
That's honestly, that's where I do the majority of my communications online.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to try and send as many people as possible over there, because again, I think you yourself and the group are a wealth of knowledge. I've learned a lot just hanging out over there, and I don't even say a lot, although I am a conversation starter now, I think.
Yeah. I like it. No, thanks for being part of the group, and thanks for having me on the show too. This was fun.
Yeah, this is great. So anyways, thank you so much, man. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
I say it all the time. If you listen to the podcast, you've heard me say this. If you follow me on any form of social media, you've heard me say this. Surround yourself with like-minded people. Surround yourself with people who are going to grow you, who are going to stretch you, who are going to push you, who who are going to draw the most out of you. Right? Other people have said it before. Tony Robbins always he phrases it as your proximity is your power. Okay. And your proximity is that area immediately around you. Okay. Now, today in 2018, it could be really looked at as your area in social media. Like, who do you actually keep around you in social media? Who do you talk to a lot? Who do you have around you in your actual life, like real life, like outside social media, on a day-to-day basis? Or who do you talk to remotely all the time? Your circle is everything. And if you're looking to grow, if you're looking to stretch, even if it's just in fitness, solely in fitness, then you need to put people around you all the time, as often as possible, and as many as possible that are going to grow you and stretch you. So if you're listening to this podcast, then hopefully you are using me as one of those people. But there's others like Patrick that you can do that too as well. So I use Patrick, right? Patrick is one of those people that I like to keep in my circle for, honestly, I think he's a great dude, and I really like him. And also for selfish reasons. I grow, I'm inspired, I'm motivated by people like that who are in my circle on a daily basis. It pushes me to do more. So anyway, if you're not already doing that, please take advantage. Go over to Eat, Train, Progress, which is Patrick's Facebook group. Go into Facebook and just search for Eat, Train, Progress. You will find it, and you will find him, myself, and 17,000 other people, plus it's probably more than that by the time this airs, who are all there with one common objective, which is to learn and grow and develop and really talk all things fitness. So also another place where you can do that is my Facebook group, which is significantly smaller on so many levels, and that is the Mind Body Community. So again, just go into Facebook, search for Mind Body Community, and apply there for admission, and one of the admins will let you in. And that's the same thing. So right now in December, I'm live on there every single day. I've been there every single day with the exception of one. I had a pre-recorded video, but I try to go in there as often as possible and leave valuable content and some training and a little bit more of what we do here in the podcast just in that group. So Mind Body Community, go check it out. And with that, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for listening. And don't forget, as always, train with purpose. And I will talk to you in the next episode. Take care.